I want people to understand this ordeal. It's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E, and watch next day on the A&E app.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
Certified cat lady Laura Bricker, have you been enjoying, along with your feline friends, Pretty Litter?
I have been. Rocky and Felix and our often hiding cat Zelda actually really like it. And I have to say, it's awesome. My house doesn't smell like that dusty cat litter. And they just had a vet checkup, and I was telling the vet, I think they're pretty healthy because the litter says nothing's wrong, even though they've been eating squirrels and chipmunks. And guess what? They were healthy.
Yeah, because with Pretty Litter, you'll see it change color if there's too much acid in their urine or too much alkaline or there's some other health problem. Also, the bag is like a 4-pound bag. Does that last a long time?
It does. It's kind of surprising. I was a little skeptical when I first got it that this was actually going to last a month as it's supposed to. But, you only have to scoop out, not to be graphic, but the poopy parts, and the rest you stir up and leave it, and it lasts for the whole month, which is awesome.
So make the switch to Pretty Litter today by visiting prettylitter.com and use promo code CRIME for 20% off your first order. That's prettylitter.com, promo code CRIME. For 20% off. prettylitter.com, promo code CRIME.
Crime. Meow. I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the podcast about true crime, pop culture, and this week we'll take the 420 to Murder Mountain.
Oh, see what you did there.
We'll break down and review the latest true crime documentary on Netflix and talk about one of the other hot releases of the holidays, the interactive Black Mirror story called Bandersnatch. Joining me to get that done and a whole lot more is my real-life husband and true crime co-author, former TV journalist, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca. Happy 2019.
Yeah, no kidding. Happy New Year to you, too. And happy anniversary to boot.
It was our anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
We did nothing.
Well, you can fill everyone in on the nothing we did in a second.
Okay.
Also with us is journalist, true crime author, former defense investigator, licensed private investigator, and our favorite certified cat lady, Laura Bricker. Happy New Year, Laura.
Happy New Year.
Also with us is our captain of woke cynicism, the author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy, and our Patreon book club host, Toby Ball. Good evening, Toby.
Ahoy there.
He's a pirate.
You said I was a captain.
Well, we're just coming off a week off, which I think we forgot to tell our audience we were doing, by the way. Sorry, guys.
See if anybody came back.
I'm curious what everybody's been up to. How was your holidays? And did you make any New Year's resolutions? Kevin, how have you been?
Well, Rebecca, you should know I've been here the whole time.
Waiting on me hand and foot.
Yeah, no, we had our anniversary on the 1st, which was nice.
Yes.
Let's see. I really didn't think you were going to be able to get me a card or anything because of your broken leg.
Yes.
So when I went out to get a card for you, I bought a card from you to me.
That's right.
And I filled it out.
That's right.
And the inscription was really sweet, Rebecca.
It was.
Thank you.
It was. I believe you said that I said that you rock my world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how lucky you were to have me.
You said that I said I am so lucky to have you.
I know. That was really nice.
It was a very sweet
really
gesture.
thoughtful of you.
Yeah. And then because I wanted things to be good for Rebecca, in her card, I gave her some scratch tickets. But there were ones that she already scratched and were winners. So she had all winners.
That's right. That's right. All winners.
Isn't it worse when you scratch a ticket and it's a loser?
Do you know what I did for Kevin, guys? I went out and got him a card and a gift, like a regular person. with my broken leg, I went to a little boutique downtown and bought him a super nice little sweater vest, and I got him a card like a regular goddamn person. Happy anniversary, Kevin.
I gave you a check for $39 and
Wow.
87 cents.
Wait, so which anniversary is this?
Our ninth.
It was our 9th wedding
Wow.
anniversary.
Is that the, what do we say,
That's
the
the,
leather anniversary?
Leather and like pottery.
The pottery
Leather.
anniversary, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was the sweater vest anniversary based on.
Well, I'm going to get you a coffee mug with all of our crime writers' names on it.
It was the
from our-
pottery anniversary. In addition to the sweater vest, I got Kevin a little spray bottle of a product called Poopery to use in the pottery toilet bowl in which he takes his ablutions.
I used that as a Yankee Swap gift one year. I put that in the Yankee Swap till at work.
Yeah. I thought it's going to come in handy.
Along with some, I won't say.
Some poo?
I think I sent some, but you should probably cut that part out.
Oh, got it. Laura, what have you been up to during our break?
Well, a whole lot of nothing, quite honestly. I've been hanging around. I have been working on, for my New Year's resolutions, eating vegetables again, because I realized I started off strong in the holiday season, and by the end, my diet was cheese, wine, and meat. So I tried a very unsuccessful recipe for some kale banana muffins, which I baked in my new Tupperware donut mold because I thought that would make it more fun, and they were still just disgusting.
Just like that party you bought them at.
Yeah, well, no, that was a fun party. I had some fun friends there. And then my other thing I've been working on in the new year, I decided 2019 is the year that my cats are going to learn to do some tricks.
Wait.
So I've been working on doing some tricks with Felix and Rocky because I've seen that video. Have you guys seen the video with the cats who ring the little dinner bell when they want a treat and they have little hats on?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I am aiming for that in 2019, and I'm well on my way. I almost had Felix jumping through a hoop the other day.
That's not going to happen.
Well,
I just tell
you know what?
It's not going to happen.
It's going to happen because I went to this cat show at Busch Gardens last year, and I was like, how do you train your cats? And they were like, if your cat is food motivated, you can train them.
If you can do that, you can do a Facebook Live with your cats.
I will. Well, I will do that. So you just stay tuned. Felix and Rocky are going to be going on the road in 2019.
Okay.
Well, Toby,
Bring them to Pod X.
Toby, what have you been up to since we last spoke? And did you make any New Year's resolutions?
So as far as New Year's resolutions, no. And yeah, it's pretty quiet. I went to, we had Christmas. We went up to see my sister and her family and my parents up in Vermont. Yeah, I almost broke my leg up there.
Oh, no, can't have two of us.
Trying to we were going to go for a walk, and my sister was driving my nephew who had his window open. And I tried to throw a football through the window.
Oh, like to
through
be
the
cool?
open car
to
window.
be like cool uncle? Yeah.
And it dropped a little short and hit the car and then rolled into this ditch. So I went to go and grab it. So I kind of jumped into this ditch.
Yeah.
And it turned out that the ditch, which I thought was about 3 feet deep, was actually more like 5.5 feet deep. But there was like a coating of ice over it. Like I think if I just stepped down, I probably wouldn't have broken the ice. But because I had jumped down, I broke right through the ice and
into what? Into water?
Into water up to
Oh
just
my
above my
God.
knee. And it was
That
it was
Vermont
kind of
ice
a
is
mess.
cold, Toby. That's much colder than New Hampshire
It was
ice.
cold. Yeah, it was like it was probably in the upper teens.
Way
low
to go,
20s.
Marino.
That would have been a really
So
stupid way to break your leg.
Oh, says
Yeah,
you.
so I jumped back in the car with my tail between my legs, so to speak, and everybody else went on a walk.
I mean, the whole thing is, though, you could have also just broken your leg going on the walk like I did, because that happens too.
Well, I probably was saved from that. And by the way, I found yak tracks.
Yes.
Which I might suggest.
Yes. People were suggesting that to me before I broke my leg. But I'm telling you, the way that I broke my leg was so boring that I swear to God, if I'd been wearing the yak tracks, the same exact thing would have happened. And I just want to thank all the listeners who've reached out to me with their own super boring broken leg stories. Like one of our listeners reached out to me and said, I broke my leg walking to my car in the Target parking lot. It's good to know I'm not alone in having the world's most boring story around the most traumatic injury of my entire life.
You got so much nice attention. I think next month I'm going to break my leg.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
You know all the sex you're not
Send me
having
some
now?
fine cigars. All the sex I'm not having now.
Just you wait.
We could bang casts together.
Well, I want to fill you guys in on what I've been doing since we last spoke. Two things. One is I finally read Rabia Chaudhry's book, A Non-Story, which has been sitting on my bedside table for like 2 years.
She harassed you about it. She embarrassed you about it. Then she sent you an autographed copy.
Yes.
Months
You're even
ago.
in the book.
I know.
You're even in
Twice.
the book twice.
Which I've now discovered because I just read it.
You also know you could have listened to the audiobook.
I wanted, I feel like I've listened to so much Undisclosed. This is one that I actually wanted to read.
Oh, you don't want to hear her voice.
Tell us about your appearances. I want to know what you did.
Nothing. There's just one.
She solved the murder.
That's right. I'm the one who found the facts cover sheet. No, at one point she just mentions that they brought me in to help produce the audio for Undisclosed, and at another point she thanks me in the thank yous. That's it. But it was enough for me. It was very exciting.
2 more times than I got
to
mentioned.
be mentioned in a New York Times best-selling book.
Thanks for nothing, Chaudhry.
But I have to say, it's funny. I don't know if any of our listeners kept up with the Anansi case. I just assume everybody has, but I know people haven't. It's a really good true crime book, and I actually think it should be in the genre of true crime books. It's written really, really well. It's super compelling. Her point of view is interesting, and there's a lot of stuff in there that even as the person who has listened to hundreds of hours of audio of them exhaustively going over all the stuff, I learned a whole bunch of stuff reading the book that I didn't know.
Huh.
Yeah, so anyway, I really recommend it if you haven't checked it out. Rabia Chaudhry's book, A Non-Story. It's very, very interesting. And one other thing that I feel like I'm late to the party on, I should have talked about this when we did our recommendation show a few weeks back, is I have a new television obsession, which I don't want to make you guys all have to watch it so we can read it on the show, so I'm just going to tell you. If you want to check out a great crime noir series, I cannot recommend enough the Swedish-Norwegian version of The Bridge. It's called Brön, and it's on Hulu.
Oh.
It is crazy good. And I've become so obsessed with it. With my broken leg, Kevin knows all I do basically is lie around watching episodes of Brön.
Yeah, it's the one TV show where you can't play on your phone because you got to read everything.
And then when you come home, I have to tell you about what happened on every episode, which
Yes.
I'm sure you will really enjoy.
I'm going to watch it. I need a new show.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
I started season 2 because I felt like I'd already seen season 1 in other languages. It's just so freaking great.
Yeah.
It's so great.
The American-Mexican version and the English-French version are good, but this is superior.
The Scandinavian version is superior.
Well, that's good to hear because I was totally traumatized by the original version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever watched that one. I was like,
yes,
what?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then I saw the American version and it was much tamer, but there was some scenes in that I don't think I've still recovered from. So am I going to have that kind of an issue if I watch this?
The Swedes don't fuck around.
No,
I mean,
it's dark. It's dark. It's definitely dark.
It's challenging.
They're not afraid of killing a kid if they need to. They're not afraid to just kill people left and right.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not afraid to linger on the shot of the dead body.
Yeah.
But it's so good. It's so much
or have
better
a long
written.
scene with some guy licking someone's.
Jesus,
Ew.
Kevin.
God, I might have to just go watch Outlander again. I don't know. I don't know if I'm up for this.
A lot of full frontal in the Swedish version of The Bridge.
They're this was on network TV in Sweden and Denmark.
It's so good.
Okay.
You
All right.
have to admit it's good. I didn't even watch the
No,
whole
it's
thing.
very good.
It's
It's
super
very
good. Anyway, I'm obsessed. I'm completely obsessed, and thus ends my mini review of Brön, available on Hulu.
Okay, I'm going to write that down.
All right, Kevin, can you please read this for me?
True Crime Podcast Update.
Now, I know nothing about this, Kevin, so you're just going to have to tell us about it. There was a True Crime Podcast update this week that people who listen to a show called Up and Vanished may have read about. What happened?
One of the accomplices in the alleged Tara Grinstead killing is, as of this recording, is on the run and wanted in a rape and kidnapping case.
Wow.
Separate from the Tara case. This is Bo Dukes, and you'll know that he was accused of helping his high school friend Ryan Duke dump and burn Tara's body in 2015. And he was indicted in June on charges of concealing a death, tampering with evidence, hindering apprehension, that kind of stuff. So what had happened apparently over New Year's? He's out on
Bail?
not bail or on his own recognizance, whatever. He's wanted for rape and kidnapping. They say that he brought 2 women home and threatened them with physical violence and a gun, and he held them at the place there and raped them. So police say right now he's on the run. He's made suicidal threats. He's known to drink heavily and has a history of cocaine use. So they are very concerned for his safety and the safety of the public. So again, that's Bo Dukes, and he is an accomplice in the Up and Vanish case. And it's weird because the crime is completely unrelated to that murder case. But, just some people, when they get into trouble, they're always going to get into some trouble, and some serious trouble.
Huh. Thank you, Kevin.
That's our true crime podcast update.
From a podcast that I didn't actually listen to. But anyway.
Oh, we listened to it.
I listened to a few episodes.
We listened to enough.
think.
We listened to enough. All right.
Cowboy cookies. Yeah.
Well, moving on. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was something really new that launched on Netflix during the break. No, I'm not talking about Bird Box. That Sandra Bullock blindfold movie that just seems like a ripoff of The Quiet Place, right? Sort of? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not talking about that. I'm
not watching it.
I'm talking about the new chapter in the popular anthology series Black Mirror. It's called Bandersnatch, and it does something no other TV show has attempted to do before. It lets the viewer choose their own adventure to influence the story.
Keep having these vivid dreams, like thinking weird things.
What sorts of things?
We're going to be a hit factory, like Motown, but for computer games. You heard it here first.
Bandersnatch. It's an adventure game based on the book. Jerome F. Davies was a genius.
See that bloke who went cuckoo and cut his wife's head off?
When it's a concept piece, bit of madness is what you need.
Now, Laura, I know you tried watching Bandersnatch and you encountered some technical issues. What happened?
Yeah, so apparently it doesn't work on all devices. And I think that I'm not the only one. Well, I know I'm not the only one who encountered this. So I have Roku for when I watch like Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever. And apparently my Roku was too old. So you have to have some little like star emblem in the top of the preview of the thing to know that you are compatible with this show. I didn't have that. So I was like, what the, and then I looked it up and I couldn't read it. So finally I was able to watch some of it on my iPad after I'm like one of those awful people who doesn't update my iPad every time there's an update. So I had to update my iPad, and then I had the right compatibility. And then I was like, okay, I can start watching this at the coffee shop while I was like, making my son do homework. So I did finally get to watch some of it. I didn't watch all of it because it was kind of an ordeal to get it set up, which, I guess maybe adds to the whole mystique of this.
Or it's just a barrier that makes it difficult to watch.
It's basically a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the ass. So I did manage to watch about a half an hour today that we can talk about.
Now, Toby, I'm curious to know what just you think. I mean, you're a novelist. I mean, you've plotted stories start to finish before. What do you think of just the concept of writing a book or writing a TV series? I mean, obviously Choose Your Own Adventure books were around when we were kids, and that was kind of it was kind of more of a game than an actual book. But what do you think of this idea of like involving the viewer in the telling of the story in the way they did with this Bandersnatch thing? Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think it's just gimmicky and should be left alone and left for kids' Choose Your Own Adventure books?
I think it's both gimmicky and a good idea.
Tell me more.
I guess I wouldn't like it if everything was like that, but I don't see any reason not to have some things like that if people enjoy it. I've never really thought about the possibility of like trying to write something like that, although I think that would probably be potentially kind of fun, like just to be able to spin off different riffs on one setup. I have to say, other than just hearing that name again and again and again, like I don't know the first thing about what it's about or anything other than that it's a choose your own adventure. As long as things are done well, like having a variety of different experiments, I guess, in storytelling is probably good. And as with podcasts and stuff, I think if people stay with it, it'll probably increase in quality.
Yep.
You might end up having some really interesting stuff eventually.
Now, Kevin, you watched Bandersnatch.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I bailed about 10 minutes in because I wanted to go to bed, but I did hear some of it. You were in the living room watching it. What is it about?
Well, it's about this kid, Stephen Butler. It takes place in the 80s, and he's writing a computer game which has to do with basically going through corridors and choosing your own path, right, in this game. Different things happen, and, it starts right away with he comes down for breakfast and asks, well, what do you want for breakfast? And you'll see, and sort of, a test for the audience of how this works. The screen will come up, and it's like Frosted Flakes and Sweet Buns or whatever the hell, and you pick the one that you want. And the story goes in that direction. So there are small decisions that you make, like, what music to buy. And then other ones about, okay, well, do you want to accept this job offer? Or do you want to go here and follow this guy or do something else? So it's basically, there's a couple, I know that there are basically 5 big storylines. There's 5 endings, and you can get there from different ways. And one, and I was going down a couple different ones. I did get to the end one time. There's basically a storyline about his dead mom.
Yeah, that was actually what I wanted to ask you about. Without getting into too spoilery stuff, our listeners who haven't watched it. It seemed like the show was really pushing you hard to choose one thing over another a couple of times. Like when you would, this is right before I left, you made the decision, like, I'm going to choose everything the opposite of what I think I'm supposed to do. And then there was one scene where, like, he's talking to a therapist and she's like, do you want to talk about your mother? And you chose nope. And she was like, are you sure you don't want to talk about your mother? And you were like, nope. And she was like, but are you really sure?
Yeah. I eventually had to say yes about that.
And then when the character is going, I feel like somebody is controlling what I do. Yeah. I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
It got super meta, yeah. Yeah, there's a whole plot about sort of paranoia and being controlled.
Yeah.
Which because it's meta in the way because you are controlling this character,
right?
And then there's another one. The theme is sort of about choosing A or B and what the consequences of that are. And the mother backstory is that when he was really little, he lost his stuffed animal, the bunny, and that made his mom late for the train, and the train crashed. So he's like tormented by if he had made a different decision, his mother would still be alive. And so there's all these different things. You are making these same kind of choices. If you had gone left, this wouldn't have happened. If you pick the thing on the right, so it gets really meta in a couple of different ways.
Like if I turned left on that road, I wouldn't have broken my leg.
Yeah,
we've talked about like 18 times in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. So it is gimmicky in the sense that, like, okay, you can go and pick this, and that and that'll happen, and that'll happen, but it also builds that theme into the actual story.
Huh.
Did you pick the Thompson twins, though, Kevin?
I did, because I didn't know the other band. But I think, like, in the beginning, some of those, while they may seem like minor decisions, I think as far as the architecture of, like, the different story paths, like, that could be, a really big diversion that takes you down in a completely has nothing really to do with the music. It's just a point where, okay, now you're going to the other hemisphere here.
Now, Laura, in your note to me, you, I think, had the same reaction to it that I did. When I started watching it, like, I just it didn't seem a story I was interested in seeing play out.
No,
and you kind of had that same reaction, right?
I just really didn't like it. I was like, I think it was geared towards a different audience than
dudes?
myself.
You mean dudes? Yeah.
People who like Black Mirror.
I love Black Mirror, but
I just wasn't invested.
Yeah.
I just couldn't feel like connected to the characters, and I just felt like, okay, this is so stupid. Like, what cereal does he want? Like, okay, I get it. We're trying this whole thing. That's cool, but I really just couldn't get into it, and I felt like I was definitely not the target audience. I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah, people with Roku are not the target audience.
Apparently, Roku is outdated. Even though I have like 3 Rokus in my house, I was like, God, I should go use my son's gaming system. That's probably compatible.
Probably.
Because that's probably the target audience for this. So I had a hard time sort of feeling like I wanted to keep seeing what was happening, except I was like, well, let's see what the next choice is that I can make. Yell at the dad or not yell at the dad. I don't know.
Yell at the dad or throw tea on your computer. That was where I
Throwing tea on the computer was the wrong choice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that's going to be a lot to rehab your keyboard.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Toby. I think it's a cool idea to do, and I think that, like, it's the first one, and they'll probably get cooler. But when I was sitting there with you, I kind of felt like it was one of those things where you were just setting up your home theater system and trying out your remote control to see what it could do. Like choose left to make rain go in the left speaker. Choose right to make rain go in the right speaker.
Well, it was cool to watch when you did make those selections. Like, the thing I was watching was, like, I was watching the screen very carefully to be like, how are they blending this so seamlessly as you're watching it to go to the choice that you made?
Right.
And that part I thought was well done, because I didn't see it wasn't like, I didn't feel like there was like some sort of a blip or anything. I mean, it was definitely very smooth to watch. much.
All right, Kevin, do you think people should check out Bandersnatch on Netflix based on your having watched the whole thing, unlike me and Laura's unqualified bailing off your 10 minutes experience?
Well, I can't say I've watched the whole thing because there's much more to it.
Right.
I'll say it this way. I've gone through, done it, got all the way to the end of a storyline. I want to go back and do some more. I want to do it again and explore it a couple of times like one would with a video game.
Yeah.
So I would say, I think it's worth trying. Just because it's a choose your own adventure and interactive, it's more than just that. I'd say get into the story. Black Mirror is always about sort of these modern technology, Twilight Zone type short stories, and I think it fits well with that. So I'd say make it one of your New Year's resolutions to do it.
Yep.
Just like you should eat things that are healthy for New Year's, and that's where Daily Harvest comes.
Oh, that's true. That's true. It would be a very good resolution to start some Daily Harvest.
Yeah, because a lot of New Year's resolutions don't stick.
Right.
But focusing on your health, well, while it's not easy and not always fun, it can be delicious.
And you get more vegetables in your diet, which Laura said she wants.
Yeah, more fruits and vegetables. Laura.
They hide vegetables everywhere in those Daily Harvest things. I mean, like cauliflower in smoothies? Yes.
Yeah, they actually have 50 ready-to-blend smoothies, a lot of savory harvest bowls, soups, and breakfast bowls. They're all from Daily Harvest. Each single-serving cup comes ready to blend or heat in just 5 minutes max. 5 minutes and you're good. Add water
easy.
Or milk. You can make it a smoothie. Don't forget, you can also heat up those harvest bowls.
Yep.
They're great snacks. They're whole meals, whatever you like.
Great lunches for work.
Yeah.
You can hog the microwave for just 5 minutes while you're making your Daily Harvest.
Oh, and it's going to smell so good. People can be so
That's
jealous.
Right. They'll be like, all I have is my leftover fish from last night. I'm going to stink up the kitchen. What is that delicious smelling thing you have?
Oh,
Can't do leftover fish. That's wrong.
You need the
Ugh.
fruits and vegetables from Daily Harvest. It's the easiest, fastest, most delicious way to load up on all those good foods. Make a healthy eating habit stick. Go to daily-harvest.com and enter promo code CRIME to get 3 cups free in your first box.
It's a good deal.
Yeah, it's a great deal. That's promo code CRIME for 3 free Daily Harvest cups at daily-harvest.com. Daily-harvest.com.
That'd be a good anniversary gift from you to me. Give me some Daily Harvest. How about that?
It's damn romantic.
Instead of just buying me a card from you to me to you, how about getting me some Daily Harvest?
Okay.
All right, I'll take
You
that.
could even lay down with a straw and drink your Daily Harvest with your foot up, Rebecca.
It's true.
And you won't even have to move.
Let's promo code CRIME for 3 free Daily Harvest cups at daily-harvest.com. Daily-harvest.com.
All right. Well, moving on. Let's talk about Netflix's new documentary. Of course, that streaming service continues to churn out great true crime. The latest is Murder Mountain. The unsolved murder of a marijuana entrepreneur is woven into a look at California's Humboldt County, where pot is cultivated and people vanish without a trace.
The Humboldt County Sheriff's Office is asking for the public to keep an eye out for a missing man.
Another man is mysteriously disappeared
somewhere in Humboldt County.
You could just tell that there's something going on up here.
There are flyers everywhere.
I don't think they have the slightest clue on what goes on in this county.
Trinity, Humboldt, Mendocino.
This is the Emerald Triangle.
This is not the hippie marijuana industry anymore.
I've been shot at, beaten, kidnapped 3 times.
No, son, don't get involved with that, please.
Get the out as soon as humanly possible.
You could end up dead in a ravine.
In that area, we refer to it as Murder Mountain.
Murder Mountain uses the tale of Garrett Rodriguez's disappearance to explain the region's hippie past, outlaw present, and uncertain future now that the state has legalized the recreational use of marijuana. We will be giving away major plot points to Murder Mountain, so if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the time code listed in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down review. So, Toby Ball, is Murder Mountain a story about a murder or a mountain or something else completely? I found myself asking this question over and over again while I was watching this documentary, and I'd love to know what you think.
So I think it's, for me at least, and one of the things I really liked about it is that it seemed as though it was part true crime, and I think it kind of billed itself as true crime because true crime obviously is hot, but it was also a documentary about a subculture, which I love. I love those kinds of documentaries. And I thought they both, sort of informed each other in a way that was really cool. I think the crime by itself, like outside of that context, is tragic and everything, but not like real interesting. And then I think the story about the subculture that develops in southern Humboldt County, I think having that crime to sort of be the focus of their sort of cultural study or whatever, I thought was also pretty effective. So I thought they did it really well.
I think it's also very lucky for them that the place where all this stuff happened was called Murder Mountain, because this could have just been a documentary about a subculture and it still would have had a kick-ass title. Let's be real, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, episode 1 of Murder Mountain sets up the story for us. Humboldt County is a wild place where lots of young people go missing. It sort of sets it up initially with that nurse who is from Australia, who comes to the town. We see her over and over again looking for her missing daughter, hanging those, have you seen this girl posters. And there are lots of theories thrown out in the first episode about where all these young people have gone, why they've all gone missing. What'd you think about that setup?
It was intriguing because, I did want to kind of know, well, what's the deal here? And I knew that we're talking about a place where there's a lot of marijuana cultivation, and the filmmakers were not really turning over many cards as to theories, as to, not just this one person's disappearance, but all these other disappearances. I think it was good in the episode 1 because by the time we got to episode 3, that just would have been a waste. We would have kind of figured out by then. We would have had enough knowledge about what the place was. But to set it up sort of like, oh, okay, well, what is this crazy place and why is this happening? And then you get to episode 2 and it's like Wild Wild Country. And, then there's another episode and it's like Up and Vanished. And then there's another episode. Well, not schizophrenic. I mean, I think there were a couple of different themes in some of these different episodes, which I think helped us understand a little better about what was going on.
Now, Laura, one of the things that we see right away also is the sort of setup of what this place is about. This is a wild place where there are a lot of people living off the legal grid for sure. And one of the things that we see is lots of young people go to Humboldt County, often by bus or hitchhiking, thinking that they can make a quick buck. And of course, these young people are vulnerable. A lot of them do a lot of drugs. They're sort of ripe for the picking of people who want to take advantage of them. And then we also see these farmers who say that they treat their workers really well. And then you look and you see the workers are all living in a storage room, working 15 hours a day, trimming bud. What do you think of this place?
It's really, as I was watching this, Ken and I watched this, and I'm like, this is not the California that I know. It looks like part Appalachia, part war zone, part third world country. You have people living in plywood shacks, and half the farms look like they're kind of abandoned, but there's still people working there, and everything just is in disarray. Did you see one farm that actually looked like it was maintained?
There wasn't a hot mess.
It was just didn't look like it, somebody's just living in a one-room shack somewhere. I mean, it was really fascinating to me. Although, no, the hippie guys, I have to say, I really loved all the hippie guys that were still there, that had been there, that went out there to build their communes naked.
Here's a photograph of the communards building the Nonagon wearing nothing but nail belts, naked with the exception of our tools.
Why were you guys naked?
It's hard to answer your question why we were naked. First of all, it is our natural state after all. Secondly, this was the quintessential hippie life. Unfettered, with a quality and quantity of freedom not experienced by a lot of people.
Splinters, what the, seriously, I want more, okay, it's all great and all, but oh my goodness. I love interesting characters, and there was so many interesting characters in this show, right down to that guy that he should have appeared more than twice. It's just always walking down the street with this giant beer.
Oh, that guy. Okay. I had this later in our conversation, but I will just set up this clip right now. 35 minutes into episode 5 of this documentary.
If you do nothing else.
If you watch not even a minute of the rest of this show, go to the 30, 32-ish minute point so you can get the setup for the best piece of tape I have ever seen in a documentary.
He runs off down to the river, tears his clothes off, jumps in the river.
They had the helicopters flying up there. That kid, though, he's from here. And the reason he stripped his clothes off, because he knows about that thermal shit. He coats himself in mud, fucking turns into a fucking Sasquatch and dips on him. It's his nature. Whatever.
Now, that's a great example, Laura, of one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because, of course, that was hilarious in its own way. Except that guy is an extreme example of a lot of the kinds of characters we see in this documentary.
I don't think it's an extreme example.
Well,
I don't know. He seems kind of part of the culture there.
Part of me was like, I would watch anything that guy was in. He should just be the main character in the whole thing. But then part of me is also like, he clearly has a lot of problems. He's obviously like an alcoholic, probably suffers from mental illness.
Drinking a 40 in the middle of the day.
40 of malt liquor in the middle of the day. But
can't draw conclusions. I mean, he's just an honest marijuana seller.
There were a lot of characters in this documentary. The hippie guys aside, the awesome private eyes aside, there were a lot of characters who were sort of the main subjects, people who were sort of giving us the background, giving us the narrative, who weren't exactly what I would call reliable, trustworthy, sympathetic narrators. I mean, I'm thinking about like the farmers who openly admit to like all their law-breaking activities. I'm thinking about the former political campaign worker guy from Utah who never shows his face except sometimes when he does.
I love that guy. Oh my God, who buries his money in the woods.
Yeah, and there's also the guy
it's
who's
S-Town all of a sudden.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, it's very S-Town. That the guy who's running his farm and thinking about becoming legal and talking about how professional he wants to be as we see him lighting up when he first rolls out of bed. Toby, what did you think about sort of like the spectrum of characters here? Because certainly they're asking us to relate to and believe in and get the story from like these people who are kind of all over the map in terms of like where they are in the moment that they're being interviewed. I mean, there's a guy named Lion who's one of the narrators who's like barefoot and like in every scene that he's in. Toby, what did you think?
Like I really like the whole thing. And I thought one of the things that was interesting is that most of these people who you see, it's not completely true. I guess there's some people who seem basically pretty benevolent, but a lot of the people, it's really a mixed bag. Like you get that one guy, the guy who has grown like the award-winning strains, and the first time you see him, he's like basically not paying these workers who worked for him for months. But then later you see him and he's like making jam with his kids.
Right.
Yeah. Who gives out these awards, by the way? I'd like to thank the Academy.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So I thought that was really good. The only thing that I was sort of critical there was it was a little hard for me to figure out like how these different groups kind of related to each other. Sort of like you did have like these guys who are clearly sort of have it together, professional pot farmers.
Right.
And then you have like the outlaw pot farmer. And then you have the people who like clearly live on Murder Mountain, where it's, a small group of people who, are pot farmers, but also, kind of live this outlaw lifestyle, where justice is delivered with a gun. And so it wasn't entirely clear to me how these different groups interact with each other. Like the Murder Mountain guys, I didn't quite get a feeling about how they fit into the like weed economy the way that everybody else did. They seemed that they were mostly there for the true crime aspect of things, but you didn't really get a sense of how they fit into sort of the larger world of, pot growing culture in Humboldt County.
Well, they had that scene, that one guy, the Murder Mountain guy with the mask, and I thought that was so fascinating. The scene where, like, that hotel.
These two, the guy in the blue, I think he's an East Coast pirate. Those two are tourists. You could tell by the short shorts. This hotel especially, this was the central hub of all of the activity. This was everything. I mean, 4, 5, 6 years ago, there were millions of dollars sitting behind each one of these doors.
What did they say? Was there some statistic? It was like 75% of the black market weed in the country came from that county and like passed through that hotel. So that was an interesting way, like in terms of like how they fit into the bigger culture.
But that was that outlaw guy, right? I mean, that was the guy from Utah.
Yes.
Like he wasn't part of the whole, like vigilante group, I don't think.
No.
He had a garden up there.
Yeah.
But I thought he was on the mountain, wasn't he?
He did have a garden up there, but he wasn't one of the main Murder Mountain guys.
If I were doing the title sequence, I would have done Murder Mountain, but like Murder/Mountain, because it really is two stories, and it's just great serendipity that the name of the place is Murder Mountain. It's about a murder, and it is about a mountain, and those are two stories are running side by side. And so you've got the story about Garrett and his father and the Alder Point 8, and that is interspersed with this history of and present day look at the rough and tumble terrain of the marijuana business in this county. When we talk about sort of that aspect of it, the weed economy, it's interesting that we're at this point, and they were good on them for sticking around long enough to capture this, is legalization and the things that we were thinking this would do and the effects that it has. Because while everybody says if we legalize it, it's going to push the black market out and it's going to be out in the open and whatnot, but they put so many regulations on what white market marijuana has to be. It becomes very expensive, and the actual price of the commodity gets pushed down. And that just in turn increases the black market supply.
I don't think they did a great job explaining that.
They didn't. I think I think you had to kind of like read it a little bit. There was one stat that I read later that I think would have made sense, is that in California they make 15 million pounds of marijuana, but they only consume 2.5 million pounds there, right? So there's this whole other big crop of marijuana that ends up, it's being grown here, but it's these other states where they have a demand,
right?
Boom, 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 boom. So legalization is pushing a wedge and making it harder to go legit, putting more pressure on maybe staying in the black market.
Now, see, when I say I don't think they made a good argument for that, because basically what we get a lot of is farmers telling their tales of woe.
We're doing everything. We're using our life savings to try to make this business go against the big wigs.
Which, by the way, were exactly the same as like the dairy farmer tale of woe. Like, there is this marketplace that has now been opened and big corporations are going to come in and they're going to create these like super dairies and put like the little guy out of business.
With a little tobacco farm.
That's right. It was exactly like that. You have that one family with the woman and the kids, and you have like the guy with the awesome marketing who basically used every shot in the documentary as an opportunity to market his product, which was, I know that Toby liked that too.
That guy was so. I went to that guy's website. I was like, those shirts are cool, and I went and checked out. They're like, we've had so much more traffic than usual.
Humble
way
cure.
Behind. Yeah, but I thought it was really interesting that it seemed like they went through the whole capitalist agriculture cycle in like 60 years, where it started off as like subsistence farming with these hippies like growing their crops and thinking marijuana is like one of their subsistence crops.
Well, yeah, because they need it.
And
that's what they said.
And then they realized it can be a cash crop. So they moved from subsistence farming to cash crop farming. And then eventually, the government comes in and passes regulations and stuff that make it impossible to continue as you were saying, like the dairy farmers and stuff, as an individual farmer. So, I think these guys would say we're gonna, the black market's the only way we're gonna make money. Well, I think that's fine, but I think as soon as it becomes big weed or whatever, the black market is going to kind of dry up, right? Because it's good. You're going to get priced out.
Totally.
They're all really interesting characters, but at the end, you're kind of wondering, like, are we supposed to be rooting for them?
That's
exactly.
the thing. There's the difference there.
Yeah.
Because milk, you look at the dairy industry, milk is legal, right?
Yeah.
And also milk isn't a narcotic. And it's like, and you do see, and by the way, I'm not judgy about people who smoke pot at all. Like, I just make that clear. I don't care. But you do see a lot of scenes with like people having their kids, like working in the marijuana fields and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like they have been breaking the law for so long, and now they want to go legal and they want to go white, and they're complaining about big pot. And I'm like, yeah, this is just what happened to the dairy farmers. But I kind of feel worse for the dairy farmers because it was like, you know what I mean? It's an interesting conundrum that the film puts you in on purpose.
Right.
I just don't think they made that connection about why legalization is bad super clearly. But
wasn't the thought with legalization is like, if you legalize it, you're going to push these outlaws out?
Yes.
And isn't that so?
That's
are
what's
we
supposed to
upset
happen.
that that's actually happening?
But let's talk about the true crime part of it now.
Okay.
Because I do think that is why most of our audience probably started watching this, and certainly why we started watching before we realized it was this whole other thing. The central story that is supposed to be the glue that ties this together is this disappearance of Garrett Rodriguez and we learn about murder and the investigation around it and the private eyes. And we meet his dad down in Southern California, sort of talking about him going missing and that story there. Was his the right crime around which to build this story? Because he's not the only murder we hear about in the documentary.
Right. No, I think it is. One of the faults, I think, also is that they kind of tease, especially these young women who disappear, and nobody, like the cops, just seem to try to ignore it as much as possible. But I do think the thing about Garrett's murder is that it's both his murder and then the response, like the community response, which I think is a good and interesting window on that subculture. I mean, that's what I was kind of saying about how they kind of complement each other. It illustrates something about the way these people live in the way they responded to that murder. I didn't understand why his murder in particular they felt so strongly about.
Now, Laura, we get this story about, this community, as Toby says, investigation into Garrett's murder. We hear about this gang, the Alder .8 of quote-unquote outlaws. By the way, they use that word a lot in this documentary.
Vigilantes, yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
They basically drive up on Thanksgiving night, confront the, quote, alleged killer, and I use that word in quotes because that's what they call him, and they allegedly get a confession from him, and they do actually get pointed to Garrett's body. They find the body. But then they all seem very surprised that the police won't prosecute this case based on their secondhand story of going and attacking this guy and shooting him and coercing his confession and finding the body. Were you surprised that authorities didn't seem to take their account as evidence in the way they seemed to be surprised that the authorities didn't seem to take their account as evidence?
No. But the police in this story, there was some funky stuff with the police. But I mean, when you see what happened and how they got the information and how they got this confession and how they, went and found this guy's body, that none of that is going to be at all even remotely admissible.
Right.
However, I was a little frustrated with the police in this story because I think there was a way that they could have worked around that and certainly gone and questioned this guy. And it didn't seem like, it was almost like they didn't even do any of the questioning or the follow-up on their own, which kind of frustrated me. I was just like, what the fuck are they doing?
They didn't want anything to do with it. With Murder Mountain,
it was like, I think they didn't want anything to do with any of it. I mean, it was like, and it was such a shit show when they finally went out and tried to bust one of the farmers and they hadn't even read that the people had a permit until they got there. Like, oh, well, you do have a permit. Have a nice day. I'm like, didn't you research that ahead of time? Yeah.
No, they got the wrong property.
Oh, you mean hot cop?
Yeah, hot cop. Yeah.
It wasn't even hot cop. It was his assistant.
They're both hot. Let's be real. It was the one good thing about the police in this documentary.
I actually kind of give the police a pass on like winding up on the wrong property because it's not like there's a mailbox that says 123 Pot Road.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this 124 Pot Road. Sorry. So at least they ask questions first before they started.
And they were nice about it.
Everything. Yeah. But I mean, what can you do? Yeah.
I thought it was pretty clear. So there's that one time, towards the beginning when one of the police officers talks about when they were going up Murder Mountain and suddenly these guys on 4x4s were surrounding them with shotguns and were and so, after that and then just seeing what else they did, I just kind of assumed that those guys want nothing to do with going into this heavily armed place where, people are very anti-police, and I think more than almost anywhere would be maybe prone to opening fire. So I think those guys were just constantly looking for excuses not to go.
Right.
And I'm not even sure if that one place they went to was actually on the mountain. I don't know if that guy was on the mountain or not. But it seemed like every time anything came up with the cops having to do something in that area, they're like, well, you don't have any proof that they're there.
It certainly seemed like that the documentarians let us believe that the cops weren't doing anything. Now, we don't really know that because a lot of it was. I was frustrated through most of it because the cops were left silent on a lot of these anecdotes and allegations. We know that they talk to the cops because we see them, but why? Yeah. But I don't remember anyone ever pressing any of either the current sheriff or the.
And why was there no arrest in this case?
Yeah.
Why was
by the time they get to the last episode, they do kind of explain, in a way that we understand because we've been listening to these different podcasts and whatnot. Hey, there's no. That's hearsay. We can't use that alone or whatever.
I hope you don't learn that from a podcast, Kevin. I hope you learn that from actually understanding the law.
But they never, there is an implication that the cops, as you say, don't want to go there and aren't responsive to stuff in that area. And it's never really posed to a cop if that's true.
Right.
Or is it, you didn't get there because of X, Y, or Z.
Right.
You have a reason why that? Because this is all their perception.
They just let it hang on the community members.
Right. And we just said that all these pot-growing narrators are, in a way, unreliable narrators. And they're all saying, the cops didn't do anything. It's like, okay, that's fine. Maybe they didn't, but
ask that question.
Ask the question of the cops and at least give us that.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to the people in the community, all the farmers say they want to cooperate.
Yeah.
They say they understand that the only way the police are going to be able to be effective is if they cooperate, and we're willing to do that. And you're right, they don't ask that question. That was a huge missing piece to me.
I mean, we see the same thing in these ones, like in an urban area. The police don't want to work in this neighborhood.
But nobody wants to cooperate.
But nobody wants to cooperate. Yeah,
but
there's similarities.
They seem to want to cooperate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Laura, we have the presence of some folks that I wonder if you related to. We've got some private dicks.
I know.
In this documentary. What'd you think about the private detectives?
I kind of liked them. It was they were interesting. I should go look up because I was curious because I thought the guy was like the head guy, but it said he worked for an agency. So I was like, ooh, this is interesting.
You mean the carpenter private dick?
Yeah, he was interesting. And then the woman, I have to say, she had some balls.
She had some bricker.
And when she went out and questioned that guy who was allegedly involved, and then she got back in her car and she was like cool as a cucumber, I was like, wow, good for her. Wow. When she's out, yeah, I know you were there. I know. And I was like, whew. So, and it was, they were clearly invested in the case. And it sounds like with all the missing people, they have some job security where they live.
It's true. Kevin, how do you feel about the way the documentary handled the non-naming of the alleged killer's name? It was very ham-fisted. Would you agree?
No, I mean, I think it was they did what they could do under the circumstances, right? You couldn't name him and not be accused of being libelous.
Right.
They could have just said, yeah, Bob, and just beeped Bob's name out every time they talked about it.
But they obviously told all the subjects not to say it.
Yeah, and so I will give you that. Sometimes in the conversations when the alleged... When it's you just tell the producers okay, so when you talk about Big Dirty Larry, you can't call him Big Dirty Larry. Just remember, it's the alleged killer. You just call him alleged.
Wouldn't it be terrible luck if his name really was Big Dirty Larry? God, the nicknames of all these characters in the show were incredible. It was
like red-haired Bob or something.
Yeah, Red Bob.
The Lion, of course.
The Dookie Brothers.
Can we talk about the guy that I call Pothead Yosemite Sam because he's like my favorite?
Who? John Riley?
John Riley.
Yeah, I call him Pothead Yosemite Sam.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
This is John Riley. He's
my favorite character.
He's basically one of the main characters of the film. He's a Vietnam vet, former hippie who lives up in the hills. Do they say he's a farmer? I'm not sure because I kept wondering how is he making a living up there?
I think they're all farmers.
And he basically takes it upon himself to be the lead investigator out of happenstance because the guys are driving by his house into Garrett's murder and become sort of the spokesperson on behalf of those looking to bring justice to this family. And then in the climax of the whole documentary, the emotional climax in the final episode, we see him meet Garrett's dad and talk about being willing to come forward and testify in court if the day ever comes, and the closure that they both had, and then both being Vietnam era vets.
I started thinking about fatherhood.
Oh.
And how you must feel.
not knowing. Trying to place myself in your mindset and just the turmoil that I know that I wouldn't be able to handle personally. I have great respect for you to have persevered what you have.
Toby, what did you think about John and his character? How do you think he fit into this? Was he kind of the emotional center for you, or is that just me?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely what they wanted him to be. Yeah, he's just another sort of interesting character in that he seemed, sort of physically neighbors with those people, and they all knew each other and stuff, and I don't think they had any animosity towards him, but he didn't seem as if he personally was part of that sort of like quote-unquote outlaw group. He seemed more like I want to live my life by myself.
Yeah.
Whereas his son certainly did seem like he was part of that group.
Yeah.
So I thought, it was just another, he's clearly damaged and he clearly, was working through some stuff by helping with the whole Garrett case. But it's also just, like, I could see where some of those guys might be pissed off at him because he's always like, it's the Alder Point 7. I wasn't really a part of it. Like, I didn't shoot or pistol whip him. I just went up and asked him and then, like, dragged him to this, site. It's
That's not what all the graffiti
come on,
says.
Man. In for a dime, in for a dollar. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I thought he was, I thought the whole thing, there was probably like 15 people in it who I thought were super compelling and interesting, and you have a pretty clearly defined idea about what they're like.
I have a question for you guys that I kept thinking about because the word outlaw does get dropped a whole lot in this documentary. The subjects in the documentary seem pretty sure that there's a big difference between what makes an outlaw and what makes a criminal. And then we hear one of the main characters in the documentary explain what he thinks that difference is.
The difference between an outlaw and a criminal is I'm not purposely going out to break laws. I just don't accept certain laws that I don't think are just.
Does that sound awful like a criminal to you guys, or is it just me?
Potato.
I don't know. I'm just splitting hairs. Laura, what do you think?
Well, they have a cause. I can get behind that because it's like, you know what? They have their own system. They know what they think is right, and that's the way it's going to be.
I agree with the law. I just choose not to follow it.
Well, because they had like their own code. Like they had their own code, and clearly they were like, this is, hey, this is wrong that they killed this like idealistic young surfer guy, and here's his poor dad looking for him, and everybody knew that something went down, and the cops aren't going to figure it out because they don't go up on Murder Mountain unless they absolutely have to. And they were like, hey, it was, I kind of appreciated it.
It's S-Town, right?
Yeah. It was like S-Town crossed on Ozark, crossed on like, I don't even know. It was just like
Costa
crazy.
Rican fever dream.
Yeah, it was just crazy.
But I think the whole outlaw thing, what I thought it was that it was really kind of anchored by this idea that they don't believe that marijuana should be or should have been illegal, and that not only that, but that the government was taking these insane, like really insane steps to try to eradicate them, often just using it for themselves.
Right.
And there became dealers and stuff, obviously. But then that seems to me to be like why they think it's more of an outlaw thing. It's like, our government's telling us that marijuana is bad and is illegal, and I don't accept that. So I carry on my commerce and my life in a way that doesn't accept that aspect of the law, and the fact that the state is so intent upon like keeping me from doing this that they're like dropping out of helicopters and burning huge grows and stuff like this. Like that to me was more sort of what they were talking about, and where there'd be like criminals are like people who are shoplifting or breaking into houses or, parts of gangs or, whatever. But we're just actually, there's like a lifestyle that we think is legitimate that the state, for reasons that we don't quite get, doesn't think it's legitimate, and that makes us outlaws.
Yes,
but
that
was my take.
Toby, they are also running around with guns, and some of them are shooting other people, and they are also doing a bunch of other criminal shit aside from growing and smoking marijuana.
But I think even those guys, but that was kind of where they drew the line, right? Is that in a weird way, it was, we have guns and stuff because, we've always had to kind of protect our own because the law, you couldn't call the cops, right? Because the cops would show up, they'd be like, "Oh shit, look at all this weed. We've got to get rid of it." So
let's get the wood chipper out.
So it's always been this sort of, we have to do our own security. And so that, of course, with all this money at stake, it leads to a certain amount of violence. But then it was sort of this wanton killing, this sort of unnecessary murder that, for whatever reason, this particular one, that was like, that's not cool. That's not the outlaw lifestyle. That is this psycho coming up here and killing somebody.
Right. Which triggered a bunch of other killings.
I'm not trying to stick up for them.
Right.
Like, I don't necessarily think you have to go from thinking weed should be legalized to we all have to be heavily armed. But I kind of thought that was where they were coming from, rather than, I don't go out and intentionally, commit crime, so I'm not a criminal.
Right. Well, it's all semantics, right? I mean, like what was the one woman interviewed said, like, this shouldn't be called Murder Mountain, it should be called Widow Mountain. And I'm like, semantics, I mean, it's it's both. It's both, actually. All right, well, let's do what we do. Let's go around the horn, and I want to get your thumbs up or thumbs down reviews of Murder Mountain. This is a 6-part documentary streaming on Netflix right now. Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down? Should our listeners check out Murder Mountain on Netflix?
I'm going to give 2 enthusiastic thumbs up, because it seems like after a while, a lot of the true crime documentaries and podcasts all are following a familiar storyline, and the cases are not unique, and it's kind of the same old, even if it's told differently. This was so fascinating. I just loved all of it. I loved all this window into this whole subculture. Like Toby, I love subcultures. The case was interesting. They had access to a lot of the people that were involved. Just super interesting. So interesting, I may even watch it again.
What about you, Toby? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Murder Mountain on Netflix?
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up too. I really liked it. The one thing to keep in mind, and we've talked about this, if you watch it, is it's not just going to be a traditional true crime thing. You have to be there for the culture and the history and all this other stuff too. Like Laura, I can see myself watching it again sometime.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Not quite as enthusiastic as the two of you. I thought it was super interesting and a really fascinating topic, and a deep dive into that topic. My one criticism of Murder Mountain is that, to me, and Kevin, this is something we commented on a few times we were watching it, this wasn't produced to be a streaming binged show. There were clear points where there were supposed to be commercial breaks. You'd see sort of breaks during the show. And then the beginning of each episode was basically a recap of the previous one that you had just watched. So there was some repetition that I thought was not necessary. I think that this was probably originally edited together to be a network TV show.
Fusion was the...
Yeah. And then it was, procured by Netflix and not re-edited for that kind of viewer. And that's my one criticism, because I do think some of our listeners might watch this and think this is slow, or this is repetitive, or this is something. And I think that just comes from the way that it was edited versus the way you can consume it on Netflix. So that is my criticism of it. Other than that, though, I found myself really enjoying it. I thought the characters were fascinating. It really was very much like a documentary about a real life S-town type place. And I love that kind of story. It's a view into a world that I otherwise wouldn't see. So thumbs up for me. Kevin, what about you?
I'm a thumbs up as well. I think that it was a good mix of the two different stories here. The story of Garrett's disappearance and the whole sort of cultural background of the setting. And this is one of those documentaries where setting and place are so prevalent and are such a character in the story and the way we feel about the documentary. So I thought it was a really interesting look and super timely, because it seems like they were still shooting film up until September.
Yeah, it's fall. Yeah.
So yeah, it's I guess you'd say it's hot off of the Avid and in your streaming box there. So yeah, thumbs up. I think it's a I guess you'd say, a sober-eyed look at the issue of marijuana legalization and crime surrounding it. And, if you want to have sober eyes, you probably should think about simple contacts.
Oh, geez, okay.
Because you don't want your eyes all red and bloodshot,
That's right.
You want to look good and prepared when you go to work or go out on the town, and you don't want to wear your glasses. You want to wear your contacts. How do you get them? How do you get your contacts?
Simple Contacts. I get mine from Simple Contacts. I love it.
Yeah, they allow you to conveniently renew your contact lens prescription and reorder your contacts from anywhere in minutes. Now, you can take the self-guided vision test. It takes less than 5 minutes. They got to remember, it isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam.
That's right.
Don't burn your doctor's card.
Nope.
You'll still go see him or her.
Very important.
But there's that second test you take if you want to also have
Contact
contacts.
lens renewal. It's perfect. You all know if you wear contacts, you run out, like, you're screwed. You're totally screwed. And you're like, oh, I got to go. And, like, with mine especially, I get the multifocal contacts. You have to, order them.
What was the weird thing that happened with your prescription just this past month?
One of my eyes changed just a little. So I had to order, a whole bunch of contacts just for my right eye. And it was a whole thing until I uploaded the prescription to Simple Contacts, and then they just sent them to me, and it was not a whole thing anymore. It's fantastic.
Right, and do they have your brand?
They're at my house in 2 days. Way faster than my eye doctor could order and get them in for me.
Yeah, all brands, all types of lenses that you're familiar with. You never have to shop around to find your lens at the best price. Remember that vision test that you can take with the app. It's only $20, and their contact lens prices are unbeatable. Standard shipping is free.
Use your FSA card.
Yeah.
It's that time of year.
You're too late.
No, it's not. It rolls over usually for a couple of months.
Oh, okay, good.
Use your FSA card.
You can get $20 off your contacts at simplecontacts.com/CWO20.
CWO20.
Or you enter the code CWO20 at checkout. That's simplecontacts.com, CWO20, or enter code CWO20 at checkout to get $20 off your contacts.
What else you got, Kevin?
Rebecca, what if your worst nightmare was real?
What
Breaking
if
your
it
leg?
was?
In Mind's Eye, the first fiction podcast from the Parcast Network, homicide detective Kate McClay is plagued by nightmares. So she also enlists her radio journalist husband to get to the bottom of her horrifying dreams. This sounds like us.
It does.
It sounds like we really could do this.
Do you think that husband bought that wife a card to give him for their anniversary?
Oh, come off of it.
It's my worst nightmare.
Yeah, in a search to end her nightmares, Kate fights against psychology, science, and her own family, and even a serial killer.
Ooh.
The scariest monsters are those hiding inside our own minds.
They are?
Mind's Eye is perfect for listeners of Crime Writers On, true crime podcast, mystery novels, and audio dramas like Limetown and Homecoming. Brought to you by Parcast, the storytelling team behind hit shows like Serial Killers, Cults, and Unsolved Murders, true crime stories. This 6-episode psychological thriller is available now. New episodes coming out on Mondays. Listen today by searching and subscribing to Mind's Eye wherever you listen to podcasts. That's Mind's Eye, MIND'(S)EYE, or visit parcast.com/Mind's Eye to start listening now. That's PARCAST.com/Mind's Eye to listen now.
Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week. Not all was calm and bright at one particular home in London, Kentucky. 21-year-old David Brannon was arrested after getting into a fight over what day Christmas dinner should be served. Police said Brannon threw the Christmas ham for said dinner at his sister, and all the trimmings ended up on the floor. It's not known what position exactly Brannon held on the question of what day Christmas dinner should be served on, but the correct answer is, duh, Christmas. Jeez, who is debating that? All right, panel, this food fight was not in the Yuletide spirit. What other way could the Brannons have settled their family dispute? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Well, I have a lot of questions for them, but I'm going to go with a tug-of-war game. Everybody for Christmas Day on one side, everybody for not Christmas Day on the other.
So one person against 50?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the right answer wins.
Christmas
So,
Day,
yeah.
you mean, wins?
Yeah.
Christmas Day wins.
All right, Toy Ball, What other way do you think the Brennans could have settled this family dispute?
I think they should have gotten some of that fine Humboldt bud, smoked up, and just chilled the fuck out.
I think we know what the Balls would have done to settle their dispute. Kevin Flynn, what about you? What do you think the Brennans could have done to settle this Yuletide dispute?
Oh, yeah, candy cane pistols at dawn.
All right. Well, before we wrap it up for the week, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
We have 2 cats of the week this week, and
That's
they
a
are
lot.
tied to my New Year's resolution. So Chelsea submitted her cats Hazel and Ducky. Lovely pictures of them. They are both big, long-haired cats. Part of my New Year's resolution was to banish the cat hair from my house. Chelsea wins because she's going to need more than plastic covers to protect her clothes from Hazel and Ducky.
Wow.
Happy New Year, Chelsea.
Happy New Year, Chelsea, indeed. All right, Laura Bricker, we want to reach out to you online and submit their cats, or shall I suggest dogs, or other kinds of animals to be cat of the week. How can they find you on Twitter?
At Laura Bricker.
And Toby Ball, people want to reach out to you and reminisce over how you guys in an alternate universe could have started a farm together on Murder Mountain in Humboldt County. How can they find you on Twitter?
I'm always at TobyBallNH.
And Kevin Flynn, people want to reach out to you and berate you for buying me for our anniversary a card for yourself signed from me by you. How can they find you on Twitter?
I am doing that stuff at Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On. And I encourage you to join the amazing community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. We also have a regular old Facebook page, by the way. Go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. I promise Kevin Flynn will be sending out a new one this week. Support the show on patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media, and you will get access to the Balls Deep Dive Book Club podcast and Laura Bricker's Rage Walking True Crime Fitness Fun group. Our theme song was performed by the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble and used with permission. This show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our basement where we keep the wayward hitchhikers we've hired to trim all of our bud. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later. All right, well, let's do a little levels check. Laura Bricker, you know what I'm going to ask you. What'd you have for breakfast this morning?
I had one of those fucking nasty-ass kale banana donut things that I tried to make.
Toby, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had grape nuts and orange juice and coffee.
Sounds about par for the course. Kevin?
That's absolutely.
I had a croissant. It was flaky.
That sounds
Flaky
really good.
croissant.
Levels sound good.
They sound good? Okay.
Yeah.
Partners in Crime Media. Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.